In my observation, and I'm completely convinced of this, I think that the worst misconceptions about Islam are not held by non-Muslims. As a matter of fact, it's by Muslims. We have a skewed view of what religion really is, what this book really is, what Islam really is, and we carry a lot of those misnotions our entire life. And it shapes our view of our religion. And that, unfortunately, this skewed view and a twisted version of what you might think the religion is, what Islam is, can affect somebody so much it might take them away from their deen. It can just literally take them away. So here we are, interested in introducing Islam to those that know nothing about Islam, and at the same time, in large numbers, even though people don't say I'm no longer Muslim anymore, they don't come out and say that, but in their head and in their hearts, they're distancing and furthering themselves from the light that Allah has revealed, and it's happening in our own families, among friends, and we're not dealing with it. We're not addressing that problem. So I wanted to start by saying that this problem didn't just come out of a vacuum. Why does somebody start doubting their religion or start feeling a lack of a commitment to their religion? Where did that come from? It's unfortunately because we as an ummah, and I don't blame any one person or any one group or any one school of thought or anything like that, we collectively, we've unfortunately given a biased message of Islam, whether we realized it or not, through the pulpit. Meaning the way we communicate the message of Islam, the way we teach the message of Islam. When a young child or a teenager came to the masjid and sat and listened to a khutbah or listened to whatever lecture or whatever else, overwhelmingly there were some messages that were there, unfortunately, for a long time, that should have been balanced, but they've been imbalanced. And I want to start with those impressions that a young person gets, and these are not something I collected, came up with myself. This is based on a lot of conversations with a lot of young people from very many different parts of the world. And this is not just Muslim youth living in the West. This is young people I've met in Malaysia or in the Gulf states, or people that I've met in Europe, or people that I've met in Australia, or here in the United States. So it's a mix of places in the Muslim world and also Muslims living here. And actually, surprisingly, the impressions aren't very different between the two. The misconceptions that our ummah has about Islam itself aren't very different. And when I say youth, you might think I'm talking about a small segment of the population. The statistics around the world are staggering. The vast majority of the ummah, maybe over 2/3, is under the age of 35. So when I say the youth of the ummah, I'm actually referring to the majority of us. We're referring to the majority of people. So if this is a crisis that doesn't just affect a small group, it almost affects the entire entity of Islam, the entire entity of the ummah. So the first impression is that the religion is really, really harsh. Like Allah is really out to punish. Like no matter what the chances are what you're doing is going to land you in Jahannam. And if not Jahannam, at least something should get chopped off in this dunya. Like it's either you're going to get some really harsh punishment here, or if not, you're definitely going to burn in hell because you were late for Fajr, or because you ate this thing, or you said this thing, or you did this, or you did that, the other. Right? So for every little thing, and unfortunately sometimes this happens through parenting, sometimes this happens through other means, the way we correct somebody is by instilling the fear of Allah in them. And it's very traumatic to do that to a child. Don't eat that ice cream. Allah is going to be very angry at you. No, Allah is not. You're going to be angry. And now you've made this child scared that Allah is constantly angry and you better not step in the wrong place because Allah is going to just ruin you. And this impression, when you say these things, they're like a piece of dirt that gets lodged in the mind. And it grows and grows and grows. And this child grows, and their assumption about Allah is Allah's default position is to punish humanity. While Allah Himself says, مَا يَفْعَلُ اللَّهُ بِعَذَابِكُمْ. What's Allah going to get out of punishing you? Why do you think Allah wants to punish you? That's the question Allah Himself asks. So what I'm trying to get at is Allah, the way He speaks about Himself has become very different from the way we speak about Allah. And that impression that we give about Allah, that He's angry all the time, or He wants to punish all the time, or the laws of Islam are extremely harsh and rigid, and if you can't follow them, you're going to be in serious, serious trouble. That's the first impression a lot of young people have. The second impression I'd like to share with you is that Islam asks me to do things that don't solve anything. Like, hey, I'm having trouble finding a job, go make dua. How's dua going to help my job? What do you mean go make dua? Like we don't explain to our young what's the connection between things. Hey, you're getting really angry, go make wudu. Okay, what is splashing water going to do, Mom? I'm still mad. Go recite this surah. Yeah, okay, I sounded these things out, but I'm still upset. How is this changing anything? You know what that impression that develops over time in the young person's mind? It's that my parents believe in this superstitious stuff, and then when I'm getting really out of hand, they take me to the imam and they say, could you recite something and on his face and all of his problems will go away? So they start thinking Islam is full of superstitions. Like it's not logical, it doesn't make any sense. And it's just like any other religion where people believe in hocus pocus, and my parents believe in it too. I'm scared to say it because mama's gonna go crazy if I say it. But that's really what it is. And nobody's ever been able to explain to me rationally, reasonably, why am I even Muslim? Other than the fact that my parents are Muslim, why am I even part of this religion? Other than the fact that I happen to be born in one of those countries, or my parents happen to be one of those countries where majority of the people are Muslim. If I was born in a different family, I probably would have been different. But other than a sociological reason, or a family background reason, I don't really see why this stuff makes any sense. Islam is just illogical. It doesn't make any sense to me. Add to that yet another problem. And that problem is, every time I hear Islam being talked about, they talk about people that lived a really long time ago and were pretty awesome. There were some really, really good people. Oh, like those are the people that will make it to Jannah. But that leaves the rest of us here, the leftovers of humanity, which are probably fuel for hell. And there's a constant comparison about how the people of the past were so much better, and by implication we must be so much worse. And already I know Allah is angry anyway, and I'm pretty bad, so I'm failing this thing. And as a matter of fact, no matter what I do, it's probably not good enough. No matter how much I pray, my salah is not going to be the same as the salah of Umar bin al-Khattab radiallahu ta'ala anhu. It's not going to happen. No matter what kind of hajj I do, it's never going to compare to the hajj of the early scholars of Islam who walked from their home for 2 years to make it to hajj. It's never going to be the same. So no matter what efforts I make, are probably not good enough. They're probably not acceptable. They're probably not to the standard that Allah wants them to be, because Allah has very high standards, clearly. There were people before, you've heard stories of people that they prayed tahajjud for 40 nights in a row. And they prayed, Fajr with the wudu of Isha. Or, you hear stories even of the companions, radiallahu anhum ajma'een. One sahabi gave, when the Prophet ﷺ asked to give in the path of Allah, Umar gave half of his wealth. And Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu ta'ala anhu gave all of his wealth. And then that's what's said in the fundraiser, right? Umar gave half. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq gave all. What are you going to give? And you're like, $10? It's probably not going to count for much, because he gave half and that one gave full. And we forget that even at the time when we cite those great companions, the vast majority of the companions didn't give half or full. The vast majority of them, who Allah is pleased with all of them, did not go to the extent that a handful of them went. Those that went that far are not the minimum standard. They are heroes and they went above and beyond the call of duty, that's correct. But to constantly quote that and to give the impression that where are you compared to them, well, that was the case even at that time. There were several Sahaba who couldn't do that and who didn't do that. You understand? So, but we give this impression that if you can't reach this, then you're probably a lost cause anyway. And of course there's the narrative that most people are going to end up in Jahannam. So chances are, I mean look at you, seriously, you think you're going to go to Jannah? And this impression is given that you're not really the heaven type, you could try, but you and I both know. And you know how I know this impression? People come to me and the first thing they say to me is, I'm not a good person, I know that, but I just have a question. Why did you Allah hasn't passed judgment on you yet? Why have you passed judgment on yourself? Why did you pass that verdict on yourself? Well, I've done a lot of mistakes, or I know Allah is very angry with me. Really? Allah is very angry with you? Did you receive an email? Did you receive some kind of communication directly from Allah that Allah is angry with you? You know what it is? People keep telling you Allah is angry with you, and you start believing people as though they have some direct channel with Allah. They don't. They don't. People's opinion of you is not Allah's opinion of you. There's a difference between those things. But you start accepting that about yourself, and you lose hope and become disconnected. Then of course, it also seems that these stories that I'm being told, or these accounts that I'm being told, they don't seem relevant to my life. Like, I've literally sat in gatherings when people come up and said, well, I was reading the Quran and it was talking about the battle of Uhud or the battle of Badr. What does that have to do with my life? I'm not going into any battle. It's not relevant to me. I've had these conversations not with non-Muslims. I've had these conversations with Muslims, right? And you know what? At some level you could say, Astaghfirullah al-Azim, la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. What kind of question is this? Yeah, you can say that, but if you don't engage in a civil conversation with people that genuinely have that question, that problem's only going to get worse. You understand? It's not going to get solved by you doing istighfar of Allah and going into a corner, and every time you see them you say, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. That's not going to solve that problem. This needs a conversation. This needs engagement. And so it becomes hard. The claim is that it's hard to relate to. And of course, the final one, among many others, is that most things in Islam are forbidden. Chances are what I'm doing is probably haram. Hey, laughing, it's haram, right? Hey, speeding is haram, right? Hey, getting a nice car is haram, right? Like even kids, like at Sunday schools, in masajid where they're learning Islam, you know the most common question kids ask their teacher? Hey, blank, haram, right? Isn't this haram? Isn't that haram? Like constantly haram, 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 haram. Like as if Allah naturally made all things haram and a few things that He allowed to make halal, while the reality is the exact opposite.